Introduction: the core responsibilities of agency representation. In the previous chapter, we examined different agency structures and how representation operates in real estate transactions. We explored seller agency, buyer agency, dual agency, and the risk management challenges that arise when agents represent clients in complex negotiations. Those concepts naturally lead to the most important responsibility created by an agency relationship: fiduciary duties. When a real estate professional becomes an agent for a client, the relationship creates a legal obligation to act in the client's best interest. This obligation is known as a fiduciary duty. Fiduciary duties require a higher level of care and loyalty than ordinary business relationships. Clients rely on real estate professionals for guidance during transactions that often involve significant financial decisions. Because of this reliance, the law requires agents to place the client's interests above their own interests and to conduct business with honesty, care, and professionalism. Arizona law reinforces these duties through statutes and administrative rules that govern professional conduct. The Arizona Administrative Code under AAC R4-28-1101 requires licensees to protect and promote the interests of their client while dealing fairly with all parties involved in the transaction. Understanding fiduciary duties is essential for maintaining compliance with Arizona law and building trust with clients throughout the real estate transaction process. A. Loyalty. Loyalty is one of the most fundamental fiduciary duties owed by a real estate agent to a client. The duty of loyalty requires the agent to place the client's interests above all other interests in matters related to the transaction. This means that the agent must avoid conflicts of interest and must not take actions that could benefit the agent or another party at the expense of the client. In real estate practice, loyalty often involves protecting the client's negotiating position and advocating for the client's goals during the transaction. For example, if a listing agent representing a seller in Gilbert receives information indicating that a buyer is willing to increase their offer price, the agent must communicate that information to the seller so the seller can evaluate the opportunity. Similarly, a buyer's agent representing a client in Chandler must avoid steering the buyer toward properties that provide higher commissions if those properties are not in the buyer's best interest. Loyalty also requires agents to avoid undisclosed conflicts of interest. If an agent has a personal interest in a property involved in the transaction, that interest must be disclosed to the client. Maintaining loyalty helps ensure that the agent's recommendations and actions remain aligned with the client's objectives. B. Obedience. The duty of obedience requires a real estate agent to follow the lawful instructions of the client. When a client provides instructions regarding how they wish to proceed with a transaction, the agent must respect those instructions as long as they are legal and consistent with the terms of the agency agreement. This duty recognizes that the client retains ultimate decision-making authority in the transaction. The agent's role is to provide professional advice and guidance, but the client determines the final course of action. For example, a seller in Scottsdale may instruct their listing agent to reject offers below a specific price point. Even if the agent believes a lower offer might ultimately result in a successful transaction, the agent must respect the seller's instructions unless the seller chooses to reconsider. Similarly, a buyer may instruct their agent to avoid properties within certain neighborhoods or to limit their offer to a specific price range. The agent must follow those instructions when assisting the buyer in searching for properties and negotiating contract terms. However, the duty of obedience does not require an agent to follow instructions that violate the law or ethical standards. If a client asks the agent to conceal a material defect from a buyer, the agent must refuse because such actions would violate Arizona disclosure requirements. C. Disclosure. Disclosure is another essential fiduciary duty in real estate transactions. Agents are required to disclose information that could affect the client's decisions during the transaction process. Disclosure obligations include both information learned from the client and information discovered through the agent's own observations or professional knowledge. In Arizona, disclosure obligations are reinforced through case law and administrative rules. The Arizona Court of Appeals decision in Hill v. Jones, 1986, established that sellers and their agents must disclose known material defects that could influence a buyer's decision to purchase the property. Disclosure also applies to information that may affect negotiations or the client's strategic decisions. For example, if a buyer's agent in Mesa learns that comparable homes in the neighborhood are selling for lower prices than the listing price of the property the buyer is considering, the agent should disclose that information to the buyer so the buyer can make an informed decision about the offer price. Disclosure promotes transparency and allows clients to evaluate the risks and benefits of the transaction. D. Confidentiality. Confidentiality is closely related to the duty of loyalty and requires agents to protect sensitive information shared by their clients. Clients often disclose personal and financial information during the course of a real estate transaction. This information may include details about the client's financial circumstances, motivation for buying or selling, or willingness to accept specific contract terms. The duty of confidentiality requires the agent to safeguard this information and prevent it from being disclosed to other parties without the client's consent. For example, if a seller in Phoenix informs the listing agent that they must sell quickly due to a job relocation, the agent should not disclose that information to prospective buyers because it could weaken the seller's negotiating position. Similarly, a buyer's agent should not disclose the maximum price the buyer is willing to pay for a property. Protecting confidential information helps maintain trust between the client and the agent and ensures that the client's negotiating position remains secure. Accounting. The fiduciary duty of accounting requires agents to properly manage and account for money or property entrusted to them during the transaction process. In real estate transactions, this duty often involves handling earnest money deposits, security deposits, or other funds related to the transaction. Arizona law requires brokers to maintain trust accounts for funds belonging to others and to follow strict procedures for handling those funds. Proper accounting ensures that funds are deposited, documented, and transferred in accordance with the terms of the contract and applicable regulations. For example, when a buyer submits an earnest money deposit as part of a purchase offer, the agent must ensure that the funds are delivered to the appropriate escrow or trust account within the required time frame. Accurate record keeping is essential because the Arizona Department of Real Estate may review transaction records during audits or investigations. By maintaining accurate financial records and following proper procedures for handling funds, agents demonstrate compliance with professional standards and protect both the client and the brokerage. Discussion questions. Why are fiduciary duties considered a higher standard of responsibility than ordinary business relationships? Answer: because clients rely on the agent's expertise and trust the agent to act in their best interest during significant financial transactions. How does the duty of confidentiality protect a client during real estate negotiations? Answer: it prevents sensitive information about the client's financial position or negotiating strategy from being disclosed to the opposing party. Why is proper accounting important when handling funds during a real estate transaction? Answer: because agents are responsible for safeguarding money belonging to others and must document how those funds are handled throughout the transaction.